The old Summit County Infirmary, built in 1864, was located on West Exchange Street between Storer Avenue and Rose Boulevard. The working farm housed a variety of people. All of those who were able worked on the property in some way. Most residents were from the Summit County area and had no one else to care for them in their later years as a nursing home does today. Inmates also included men, women, and children who were epileptic or suffering with tuberculosis or alcoholism. Still, others were labeled as crazy, demented, destitute, or deformed. Many unwed, pregnant girls and women were thrown into the infirmary by parents or other family members. Life at the Summit County Infirmary was difficult. The farm cultivated grain and raised livestock, which supplied the residents with eggs and milk. Additionally, their labor in the fields yielded fresh vegetables. Any surplus produced beyond their needs was sold to the public to help offset the institution's expenses. Ellen Boyd had been an inmate of the infirmary for a number of years and was listed as one of the hopelessly insane. While living there, she had never been considered dangerous by any of the residents or employees. The only complaint against Ellen was that she liked to run away. In the beginning of her stay, she would use every opportunity to escape the grounds and head back to the city. She'd then hire out to do housework and did very well at it for a week or two, or until she got her hands on some whiskey. She'd then become violent and be taken to jail, and then moved back to the infirmary. Throughout her stay at the infirmary, she consistently took care of her own laundry along with various tasks that needed to be done around the facility. The staff allowed her the freedom to manage her activities, only monitoring her closely enough to prevent any attempts to escape, which occurred less often as time passed. She was well known for her friendly conversations with both employees and fellow inmates. Additionally, she enjoyed dancing in her cell during the intervals between being released for chores. On October 30, 1871, Ellen decided to carry out her usual laundry routine. She lit a fire and heated the water at her fire pit in the yard, located approximately 30 feet from the back door of the hall that led to her cell. Mr. Polly, the hired hand, began to replace the straw in her bed while she was busy. He made his way to the barn for some fresh straw, leaving the back door ajar. Meanwhile, the superintendent, George W. Glines, sat in the office, engaged in some writing, positioned so that he could keep an eye on Ellen working at the wash tub. Before long, he observed her rising to grab an old axe before making her way back to the open door. His first instinct was to assume she planned to return to her cell and dismantle her bedstead. He set aside his current task and rushed through the facility, navigating into the hall of the insane department, ultimately arriving at the far end from where Ellen had entered. He did not make it in time. Ellen had gone down the hall, into Laura Lyon's cell that stood next to her own, and struck Mrs. Lyon 3 times with the axe. Ellen then left the cell of her victim and went outside and began washing the blood off the weapon. Mrs. Lyon's body lay as it had been dragged, about halfway out of the cell. She had 2 gashes on the top of her head and her back. Blood was splattered on the walls, and the strikes on her head crushed her skull, and blood streamed onto the floor. Mr. Glines immediately ordered Ellen to her cell, and she readily complied, and he secured the door before running to care for Mrs. Lyon. It took 45 minutes for the doctor to arrive after being summoned. She passed away from her wounds minutes after the doctor arrived. Ellen's punishment. Her arms were strapped down for many years in what they called a muffle. A strap was secured around her waist, and from this strap, 2 additional straps extended to her wrists, attaching them to the waist strap. Today they are called belly chains, or Martin chains. This arrangement tightly bound her hands to her body. She was permitted to leave only under exceptional circumstances. However, she conversed with the new inmate in the adjacent cell, and continued to dance daily until she succumbed to breast cancer in 1892.